Welcome to List House. The NSW government has dropped a blueprint that will reshape Australia's largest city. Sydney is making its biggest bet in a generation, a 20-year plan to house over 1 million people.
Sydney is one of the most desirable places on the planet to live, but for the people who actually live here, the math tells a different story. The median house price has reached nearly 13 times the average annual household income. This massive price gap is forcing average workers out of the neighborhoods where they work and driving development endless outwards. This crisis is the result of decades of disjointed decision-making. For years, government projections chronically underestimated actual population demand, leaving planners constantly trying to catch up to a reality that had already passed them by. Looking at this historical mapping of Sydney's footprint, you can see the physical toll of those errors. Instead of building upward, the city layered sprawling, disconnected development rings over the landscape for an entire century. This chart shows the population-weighted densities of major international cities. It reveals how abnormally spread out Sydney has become. With a density score of just 4.7, it consumes a massive geographic footprint compared to efficiently packed global peers like Singapore or Barcelona. The previous state planning model, the Metropolis of 3 cities, allowed government departments to operate in complete isolation. Housing quotas, job creation zones, and infrastructure budgets were all planned in separate silos, leaving newly built neighborhoods without the schools, transport, or local jobs they needed to function. A city does not become this unaffordable by market accident. The current cost of living is the direct, mathematical result of a fragmented system that rewarded endless suburban sprawl over integrated urban density. Time is up on the old model. Demographic projections show that by 2046, Sydney will need to absorb an additional 1.3 million residents and generate 950,000 new jobs. To prevent a total collapse of livability, the New South Wales Minns government has entirely scrapped the previous approach to managing the city's growth. They've replaced it with the Sydney Plan. For the first time, land use, infrastructure, and housing development are locked together under a single, unified command structure. This is a legally binding blueprint. It is designed to force a massive physical correction across the entire metropolitan area before the population wave breaks. This map outlines a hard geographic divide to rebalance where people sleep and work. In eastern and central suburbs, development is forced inward and upward for new housing, maximizing existing infrastructure. By contrast, the vast lands of western Sydney are weaponized for aggressive industrial expansion. The strategy hinges on the new Western Sydney International Airport and the surrounding aeronopolis. This massive logistics and innovation precinct is tasked with generating the lion's share of those 950,000 required new jobs. By concentrating housing where infrastructure already exists and jobs where new land is available, the plan creates the room needed for that 1.3 million person projection. It avoids the congestion of trying to force both massive housing and industrial growth into the same overstretched corridors. But mapping out a solution on paper immediately hits a political wall. State governments historically struggle to force highly resistant local councils to actually rezone their neighborhoods and approve high-density construction. To bypass that resistance, the state has activated a series of rigid enforcement levers. First, every local council has been issued strict, mandatory 5-year housing targets. The ability to indefinitely delay development approvals has been revoked. Next is the 30-year rule. Councils must legally maintain feasible zoning capacity to last 3 decades. As construction drains available land, they must continuously rezone new, buildable areas to keep the pipeline full. The zoning must translate to realistic development. Then comes the financial lever. Through the Urban Development Program, the state is monitoring housing completions and tying crucial infrastructure funding directly to performance. If a council wants state money for roads and schools, they have to hit their housing targets first. These mechanics strip local neighborhoods of the power to block density. Ultimate control of Sydney's physical layout has been transferred directly into the hands of the state. If the plan works, the Sydney of 2046 looks highly efficient. The government envisions 15-minute neighborhoods where daily needs are a short walk away, 40% tree canopy coverage, and a resilient blue-green grid protecting waterways and parks.
But political critics point out a glaring flaw in a 2-decade vision. A long-term strategic document does not put a single shovel in the ground today. The legislation does nothing to instantly relieve the agonizing waitlists renters face this month, nor does it offset the massive global supply chain shocks that are actively stalling current construction projects. Recognizing the immediate lag, the government's short-term bandage is a $52 million development coordination authority. Its sole mandate is to cut through bureaucratic red tape and accelerate the approvals already sitting in the pipeline. This reveals the inherent tension of the entire policy. It provides a mathematically sound blueprint for the city's long-term survival, but demands that citizens endure severe economic pain in the present, while those massive structural changes slowly take shape. The Sydney Plan transforms how the city functions by integrating housing targets directly into state legislation. It permanently links infrastructure funding to local approvals, effectively centralizing control over the city's growth. By enforcing strict capacity targets and stripping away local veto power, the legislation ends the era of set-and-forget urban planning that fractured the housing market in the first place. But the plan's ability to save the next generation from being priced out of their own city relies entirely on one untested factor: the political willpower of future governments to maintain and enforce these rigid rules for the next 20 years.
So if you're watching this from Sydney, here's your playbook. 1. If you're buying, target the east, near metro stations and town centers. Or prefer west. Rezoning is coming anyway. 2. If you're investing, Western Sydney houses under $1.4 million with airport or metro exposure are the growth story. 3. Avoid oversupplied high-density unit precincts in Parramatta, Homebush, and Zetland. The plan doesn't fix a glut. That's already here. Betting with them, or against them. 4. If you're renting, don't expect relief overnight. This plan is about 2046, not next quarter. The Sydney Plan isn't just a document. It's a bet, a 20-year wager that this government, and the next 3 after it, can actually finish what they started. The question is, are you betting with them or against them?